start the meeting. So I want to welcome everybody to the morning huddle for Friday, December 17th of 2021. And this is our last morning huddle, guys, of the year, because of course, as you know, the next 2 Fridays are holidays, and we're going to be spending time with our families and hopefully having some time to reflect on life, express gratitude for all the blessings we've received, and then start thinking and meditating about what is to come for us in the future. And we want to make sure that under, Strive 305, the mayor's initiative to help small business owners, that everybody on this call has a fantastic 2022. That is what this morning huddle is all about, to keep you connected to leaders that can assist you and to keep you informed so that you're never at a loss as to what to do next in your business. That's the idea. So there's some folks in the waiting room, and let me let them in. And that being said, I want to introduce our featured guest for today. I'm really excited about having her on. Her name is Kiara Brandstetter. Kiara is the director of the Florida Community Development Legal Project and the Affordable Housing and Community Development Practice Group at Legal Services of Greater Miami, Incorporated. Kiara primarily represents nonprofit organizations that preserve and develop affordable housing and provide other community development services. She handles a variety of real estate matters from her nonprofit and small business clients, such as structuring, financing, and closing real estate transactions, and remedying title defects. Kiara also represents her clients in other business transactions by assisting with negotiations, drafting transactional documents, and providing training, support, and counsel in corporate governance matters. Kiara graduated summa cum laude with a bachelor's degree in economics from Barry University. She graduated cum laude with her Juris Doctor from Florida International University College of Law. She is also a graduate of the Community Scholars in Affordable Housing Program, a collaborative program sponsored by the University of Miami, Catalyst Miami, and South Florida Community Development Coalition. She is a member of the Florida and American Bar Association. Kiara began her practice of law as a social justice fellow with FIU and worked as a program attorney with Neighborhood Help, a Miami-based medical legal partnership, where she assisted low-income residents of Miami with a full range of legal services, including healthcare access, consumer issues, public benefits, estate planning, and housing. Please help me welcome Kiara to the Morning Huddle.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, look, we have some Panthers in the house. We have more than a few. So Kiara, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the great work that you do on behalf of our community. So that's the first thing. I just want to express my gratitude for everything that you do and using your talents and legal mind to assist others. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing now.
All right. Well, let me just say thank you again for having me here. We've been kind of working in the dark for the past few years, like behind the scenes. And this year we made the jump to advertise, have a new website at flcommunitydevelopment.org, and really advertise these services that we provide. So we are, Legal Services of Greater Miami is a nonprofit law firm, meaning that our clients don't pay us. We are funded by Legal Services Corporation, a federal corporation for assistance to individuals. And then my project in particular, where I help small businesses and nonprofit organizations, is funded by the Florida Bar and a few other grants. So the goal of this project is we do not litigate. So if you are suing or being sued by somebody, that is not what we assist with, but we do help with your transactional business matters. So that means for nonprofit organizations and eligible small businesses, if you're at the very beginning and you want to form your business, we can help you figure out what the best business structure, the best business entity is for your business. We can make sure that you're set up properly and registered properly. You've got the right documents in place. And then as you age out of the startup, the very beginning phase, we can help you with drafting customer contracts, client contracts. So maybe your business is being hired to do something. We can make sure that we revise those contracts and make sure that you're in a good position to protect yourself in your business. And, you know, we always say you should never put your signature on anything before you either have an attorney well, for sure an attorney review it, or at the very least, you have to understand every single sentence in that agreement. So we really encourage you to make use of this free resource and have us help you make sure that your business is run properly and legally, and help you with anything else that might come down the line in terms of contract drafting. Again, real estate is a very big line for us. We do have a bunch of nonprofit affordable housing developers, so real estate is right in our area, and anything from purchasing and selling properties to problems with title or commercial leases, which has come up a lot, especially during COVID. That's what we can assist with.
Fantastic. And I want to encourage everybody to please chime in. If you have a question for Kiara, this is your opportunity. Just raise your hand and I will pass you the mic. That being said, so Kiara, what are some of, I wanted to ask you, nonprofits versus for-profits, are there the legal needs different in some way?
So I would say for nonprofits versus for-profits, I mean, incorporation, definitely, right? A nonprofit is controlled by a board and it's technically owned by the public, whereas a for-profit, a small business or any type of business, has specific owners. So definitely the governance requirements are very different from a nonprofit than it is from a for-profit. That said, the actual business transactions, the actual business needs overlap a lot, and I think a lot of times for our nonprofits, I see the mistake where a nonprofit says, oh, I'm a nonprofit, I don't have to compete in the market, or I'm a nonprofit, I'm not allowed to make a profit. Well, that's not quite true. You're allowed to make a profit, but you just have to use it for your mission. And especially when you're a nonprofit, you apply for grant funding all the time, you have to compete with many, many other nonprofits. So overall, once we have all this incorporation done in the corporate governance, the day-to-day business needs, I believe, are very similar. You still want to make sure that you understand everything that you're signing, that you have proper contracts in place, that you protect the owners of the business or the board members of a nonprofit from personal liability. So that is overlapping needs, definitely.
Great. What are some of the needs that you've seen, or what are some of the things that you think small business owners should pay more attention to when it comes to their legal matters? What are some of the things that you run into every day?
So definitely one of the biggest things is personal liability. The whole point of creating a small business, whether that's an LLC or a partnership or any other entity, is that you remove yourself, the individual, one step from the activities of your business. So in the event something happens, somebody sues your business, you yourself are not implicated. And that means you have to be very consistent with, simple things that seem to be simple, like how you sign your contracts and what you're made to sign. For example, many times when you start a new business, you may have to sign personal guarantees, which means that if your business can't pay for something, you yourself, your personal bank accounts, your personal possessions might be up for grabs, and you yourself have to pay for that. So just very important is just to understand what it means to run a business and why it is there, and how to keep those formalities in place so you keep the shield up of this separate entity is very, very important.
Interesting. And there's a conversation that I have often about LLCs, right? And I think that that's a popular type of corporation or entity. And it has its pros, which are very attractive because it's flexible, but it also has some weak points in terms of that liability. Can you address those for us?
Well, I would say for most businesses, a limited liability company is probably the right default to go to. It's easy to set up. The corporate formalities are not that big of a deal. And especially if you're in the business on your own without any partners, the LLC is a really good way of starting up. I think one of the biggest mistakes somebody can make is starting to run a business, but not having an entity, right? You basically are a sole proprietor and you just start business on your own. The things that you should definitely look out for is, accounting, like your own personal taxes, because you could go, this is a whole conversation we can have a big webinar on, but there are different ways that you can be taxed when you have a limited liability company, as well as if you create a corporation or any other entity. So it's always advisable to contact your accountant or make sure you have an accountant and get some more information on what type of taxation scheme would be the best. But generally, as a default, if you have a limited liability company and you don't change anything about the taxation scheme, you basically report the income on your own personal income sheet. So any money that your LLC makes, you basically put it on your own income tax return. And that is very easy, right? And that's why an LLC is oftentimes very easy to do, because it's so easy to set up and so easy to run. Where usually you start getting some problems if you start adding other members, or if you are in business with somebody else. The big thing here is you have to make sure you have a proper operating agreement, right? You have an operating agreement is the agreement basically between all the members of an LLC on how they want to run the business, who owns the business, what happens if somebody wants to leave the business, what happens if somebody dies, right? There are many different ways something can be divided up. For example, if you die, you may want your children to get the part of the business, or you may have an agreement that the other partner gets to own the entire business. So I think most of the issues come up when you have a partner and you haven't had these really fundamental, like in a marriage, the fundamental discussions of what you want to do with the business, how you see it going, and not only what happens if you make the big bucks and the business succeeds, but what happens if you're no longer happy with each other and you basically want to get divorced and go your separate ways. So the operating agreement makes sure that all of those situations are taken care of in the front end, and that when something does happen, you know how to handle whatever comes in the future based on your operating agreement.
Right. And this is the stuff that you help small business owners solve, right? Or
exactly.
Execute.
So we help incorporate the small business, whatever entity you end up choosing, and we'll help you create a operating agreement. Whether even if you're an individual, you may also want to have an operating agreement, because it just leads to the legitimacy of your business, right? If you have all your corporate formalities in place. A single member operating agreement usually is very simple, but it's a good idea to have. And yes, so we'll help you draft those. And if you have any concerns, for example, what happens with my business if I'm a single owner and I die? Who do I want this business to go to? Those are all these kinds of considerations that we can help you with. And then, of course, also making sure that you're properly registered with Florida, the Department of Florida, right? Sombiz.org is the magic website that we all want to be on. And yeah, so this is everything we can help you with.
Fantastic. And I want to encourage, we're talking legal matters with Ms. Kiara Brandstetter from Legal Services of Greater Miami. So if you have a question, guys, please don't be shy. Raise your hand. I will pass you the mic. Couple more questions, Kiara, that I had that I get a lot of the time. So one of them is S corps. So I'll ask somebody, hey, what type of business do you have? And they'll tell me I have an S corp. Is that an accurate statement?
No. So usually when you apply for our services, we'll send you a questionnaire and we ask you what kind of entity you have. When you say S corp, I know you don't really understand what the different entities are, because as we talked about the limited liability company and the taxation scheme, an S corp is the way you choose to be taxed. It's not an entity. So we have the first layer of choosing your entity, which in Florida could be your LLC, a partnership, or corporation. And then you move on with the IRS and you choose how to be taxed. And you can be when you have a corporation, it can be a normal corporation, or it can choose to be taxed as an S corp. But also, and here's the trick, when you're an LLC, you can choose to be taxed as an S corp. So an S corp, being taxed as an S corp, can give you some taxation benefits, especially with how you're treated by your own business, whether you're self-employed or you're considered an employee of your own business. And that has impact on how much taxes you're supposed to be paying. And that is really something that you should be discussing with your attorney and your accountant, because at some point, especially when you run an LLC, there is an income level when your LLC makes a certain amount of income where you're generally better off swapping from the default taxation scheme to an S corp taxation scheme, because you get some tax benefits. But that's definitely a discussion that you should be having with your accountant at that point.
I think that's a huge point, right? That you have this corporate structure or entity, and then there's the taxation layer to it, right? So they're two different things. So in fact, LLCs can be S corps, right? Tax as S corps, but other entities can as well, right?
Yes, yes. So there's a whole, so basically the corporation and the LLC entity can be taxed as S corps. And again, it just depends on the income that the business is making, how many partners you have. And then there are some certain requirements to be taxed as an S corp. An S corp you have to qualify for, in the sense that there can only be a certain amount of shareholders. They all have to be, I believe, residents, or at least legal residents of the USA. And there's some other requirements. But again, there are benefits that you should be looking into. But what we find most of the time, most small businesses starting out are fine getting started as an LLC, being taxed under the default scheme. And then a few years down the road, once you get going and make more income, at that point, there might be a very good discussion with your attorney and your accountant to see if you get tax benefits being taxed as an S corp.
Thank you so much for clearing that up. I see that Yasne has her hand raised. Yasne?
Yeah, really briefly, following up on what Kiara is saying about the requirements on the part of, being a legal resident and whatnot, but there is a very important requirement for an S corp from the accounting standpoint. As an S corp, you are considered an employee of your company. So you are supposed to pay yourself a salary through payroll. And that can fly in the first few years, but it's a very red flag when you are a business owner and you've been years in business being taxed as an S corp and you're not paying yourself a salary, because you're not contributing to your Social Security, your Medicare, you're pretty much avoiding self-employment income. And that is a red flag. So keep that in mind, and I'll be happy to support you if you need more information.
Thank you, Yasne. Did you want to add anything, Kiara, to that?
Just as she said, it's really important when you make those decisions that you consult with an accountant to make sure that you're actually setting this up correctly and you don't end up in trouble with the IRS, because it's the last thing I think everybody wants to do, get in trouble with the IRS. So, just make sure that when you do choose how much compensation you should be making, it's reasonable. If your business makes $1 million, you're the only employee and you're taking a $10,000 paycheck, for the entire year, then that doesn't seem reasonable. So the reasonableness standard is definitely very important.
Yes, and I hear that all the time from providers of funding, that these things, that inconsistencies that they see in how the companies are structured and handle their accounting and legal matters, prevent them from getting the funding that they need or being accepted to programs. So it's very important to keep an eye on that. So I'm going to go to Will Dorville, and then I think somebody else, Christian, maybe raised his hand, but I see you lowered it. So Will, you're up next. Will, you there?
Yeah, my background is kind of loud, but I text my question so that I don't disturb with what's going on, because I'm at a Dunkin' Donuts, but there's no way to do anything productive here because the music is loud.
Got it, Will. I'll read your question. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, you gotta come to the Oasis, my friend.
Say less. Just drop the contacts and I will.
I got
Awesome. Check that chat box, guys. It's very valuable. It has a lot of good information. So he is asking about funding / investors as an S corp. Not exactly clear what that means, Will, but and funding rounds. Does that make sense, Kiara?
A little bit. So basically, with a C corp, you can be traded on the market. For instance, you can have thousands, not millions, of shareholders that all have their stakes in your corporation. With an S corp, that is limited, and the types of basically the S corp. The idea of the S corp is like a closely held corporation. So you can only have, I believe, the latest was up to 100 investors, and they have to all be residents and so on. So it's much more limited what you can do with the S corp investors. I'm not quite sure what he means with funding rounds, but an S corp, yeah, I don't understand the question about the funding rounds.
Will, can you chime in for a second and then clarify that?
Yeah, sorry. Like for example, your initial seed funding, when you open up your business to external investors, there was some chatter that I heard about S corp may be a best route to go about that when you're looking at inviting people into the business as investors, and you're doing seeding rounds, and you're looking to ramp up and reach escape velocity like I am, like that type of stuff. Like, how do you ramp up more efficiently? Because LLC, I don't believe it's more on a private side. If you have people that's part of the corporation, like you was mentioning about the operations, or if they're part of the operation or not, but if they're investing in you, you do have some type of agreement. On the S Corp, is just investors that have no operational say so, but you have some type of agreement that you're going to do whatever you're promising to do for the amount of money that they're willing to invest in you. So I was just asking on that front, because it's hard for me to use the exact terminology that I need, because that's what I need help with.
Okay, so I would say you should apply for our services. We kind of can talk it through with what you're trying to do. But I just want to remind everyone that, again, the S Corp is a taxation scheme. So what you're saying, you definitely want to be a corporation, right? Because you want shareholders that invest into your business. But then you need help figuring out what's most convenient, or the best way of getting funding, whether that's a C corporation or S corporation. And that also depends on, what your plans are for your business, how much money you're currently making, how much money you're taking out, and so on. So that would be something that's more of a legal analysis that's difficult to explain without having more knowledge of this. But if you do want to, or anyone wants to apply for our services, you can go to flcommunitydevelopment.org. We are a nonprofit law firm, so we do have some eligibility requirements for small businesses. We are primarily looking for low to medium income businesses, so businesses that are owned by owners that are low to medium income and that are either located or serving the low to medium income areas of Florida. If you feel that you fall into those categories, please go to flcommunitydevelopment.org. You can apply online. There's a very short application form. There's one box that says, what's your legal need? The more detailed you are, the easier it is for us to already decide on the front end how to best help you. So please leave a few sentences for us, and then you'll be contacted by our legal specialist. And he will give you some forms to make sure that you are eligible for our services. And from there, if your legal need is something that we can help you with, we will set you up with a 1-hour consultation with one of our attorneys. And during that 1 hour, it's basically to discuss whatever the legal need is that you have, maybe anything else that we flagged as you went through our intake. You had to answer some questions, so maybe we flagged some other legal issues. And then anything else you want to discuss. Sometimes we can help you within the hour. For example, a big thing that always pops up is, well, I've been administratively dissolved. How can I fix this? Well, that's something we can help you with within the hour. But sometimes you need some more hands-on legal assistance. And at that point, we would like to onboard you as a full client of legal services. And from then on, if you are eligible and meet all of our requirements, then we can help you draft those contracts. So make those decisions. What's the best way to get funders? Is it an S Corp? Is it an C Corp? Where are my shareholder agreements? How do I make disbursements and so on? Those are really questions that you would work very closely with your attorney with to figure out what the best way of moving forward is.
Thank you so much for that. And I am showing the website that you referenced, Kiara, so folks can see it. And I'm going to go next to Mr. Christian Perez. Christian, good to see you.
Thank you.
There you go.
Nice to see you as well. My question is about I heard say that if you're an S Corp, that you gotta pay yourself as an employee. But from what I understand, when you pay your taxes from your earnings, you're also those taxes that you're paying include like Social Security. When they're calculated, those include Social Security benefits that you're paying. So do you have to pay yourself on top of that to pay extra Social Security? Or is it just in case you're not earning enough to contribute to Social Security? So if your earnings are less than $5,000, let's say, then you recommend that you pay yourself throughout the year?
I think this is a question that an accountant should answer. Because goes back to how to best structure your, your income, how much you're making, how much you're paying yourself, and from there, how much you owe to Social Security and, other taxes. So I think that's a very, that's a difficult question to answer without knowing more about your business and knowing more about, your balance sheet. But that's definitely something you want to bring up with an accountant to figure out what the right taxes are.
Yes. Yes, Nate, do you have any quick thoughts about that?
Yeah, really briefly, so you understand how it works. When you are taxed as a sole proprietor, when you're doing a Schedule C, whether you are a sole proprietor or LLC one member, you are automatically taxed self-employment income. So you are contributing to your Social Security, your Medicare. That's why you end up paying 15.4%, right? But when you have an S Corp, your distribution is not taxed as self-employment income. You're not paying any taxes at the business level when you have an S Corp. So when you do an S Corp, if you had a gain of $10,000, what you're gonna see in your taxes is a K1, a distribution of $10,000. Those $10,000 go to your personal taxes, and you only pay taxes at the personal level, the personal tax bracket, meaning you're not being taxed as a business. And that's the beauty of an S Corp. But this is why the only way for you to contribute to your Social Security, Medicare, and pay your self-employment income is through payroll when you have an S Corp. And yes, I'll be happy to be more specific if you need to talk to me. But I hope this clarified the distinction. When you have a Schedule C, you are automatically taxed. You contribute, but when you have an S Corp, you're not. That's why you have a less tax liability, but you gotta be careful.
Well, thank you, yes, Nate, for chiming in on that and clarifying. I'm gonna go next to Mr. Marlon. I think he had his hand, and then Mr. Dave Burney. Marlon, good morning.
Good morning. Happy Friday to everyone. I don't have a question, but just a shout out for Kiara. Many people may not know that Legal Services Greater Miami is a nonprofit organization like many of us on this line, and depends on individual company support in order to provide the services that they do. I've been a beneficiary and a partner with them for many, many years. And wherever we can support them personally with a donation, we should. In order for Kiara and her team to do what they do on our behalf, they have to get the support from the community. So I just want to say that we should support them wherever we can, as families and individuals, so that they can provide the services they do to low to moderate income families within our community, because it's so needed.
Thank you so much for saying that, Marlon. And I wonder, is there a link where folks can support Legal Services? Does anybody have it handy?
There's a donate here button on our flcommunitydevelopment.org site, which goes specifically, once you click on that button, you see the different agencies that are part of the FCDL project. My particular agency is Legal Services of Greater Miami. So if you want to donate to the Miami folks here for Legal Services of Greater Miami, where I'm working, you can donate there. Exactly. Donate here button.
Perfect.
And then you can also, of course, go to our main website, legalservicesofgreatermiami.org, and you can also donate there.
It's Legal Services of Greater?
Legalservicesofgreatermiami.org.
.org. There it is. Okay, I'm going to put that in the chat box, guys. So if you can support these efforts, please do, because the need is great. And I messed up on something. So yeah, I'll retype it and get there. I want to go next to, and I want to thank Marlon for that comment. Thank you. I want to pass it over to David Burney.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good
with
morning.
the North Miami Chamber. So I have a question. People that have a job, they already have a career and they have a side hustle. What is your view of them doing a sole proprietor, seeing if that works first before they go through the whole thing?
So the problem with sole proprietorships are that you do not have a shield of liability, like another wall between liability. So it depends on what you're doing, right? But most often than not, I always recommend create an LLC, it's cheap and it's easy and it gives you that protection. For instance, even if I'm just baking cookies in my kitchen, somebody gets an allergic reaction and they sue me because they had hospital bills. Now they're suing me personally. And if I have a judgment against me, it's my own personal bank account. It's my home, it's my own personality that's at risk. If I have an LLC and the LLC is the one that, is the outward facing face, then they'll sue the LLC, and the only recoupment that the person can get is the assets of the LLC. The LLC does not own your personal bank account. The LLC will have its own separate bank account. It may have some assets if I'm, cooking in the kitchen. I may have some tools and equipment. But overall, if they get a judgment against the LLC, my own personal bank account is not at risk for as long as I have proper formalities. What does that mean? Well, I don't use the LLC's bank account as my own pocketbook, or I don't commingle. I have two accounts and I'm being proper. So it's always a good idea, especially if you have any type of business where there could be some risk, to have an LLC, and of course always have proper insurance in the right amount. That's also very important. But the problem with sole proprietors, and the other thing is also, even if it's just a side hustle, business credit, right? If you're a sole proprietor, you are in business with yourself basically. And so if you have a bank account, it's open under your own Social Security, and you're not building that very important business credit. So even if you just have a side hustle, but you think maybe even in 5 or 10 years, it's something you want to get more into, you want to start building a business credit as early as possible, which means you want to have a proper entity, you want to get an EIN, you want to open a business account, and you want to use that account for, even if it's just, going to Publix and buying your ingredients for your cookies that you're going to bake at home. So overall, again, because LLC is relatively cheap to create, very low maintenance, it is a good idea to, even for side hustles, create an LLC and do proper business right from the beginning.
Great, thank you so much for the question, Dave. And then Christian has a follow-up question. It looks like a comment. Christian, go ahead.
Hi, Kiara. Thank you, Danilo, for the floor. Kiara, I was just wondering, I've heard multiple people say that when you have a single member LLC, it's very easy for, if you actually get into litigation, for the veil of corporation to be pierced and for them to go directly to your assets. So I've heard people expound to add a second member, even if it's a family member, for 1%, so you actually do have two members, and so they can't get to you personally, because if it's a single member, it's easy for them to pierce that veil. Is that something you've come across? What's your legal opinion on that?
No. So basically the idea of piercing the corporate veil means that, the point of creating an LLC is to create that separation between you and the business. In Florida, if you are basically not maintaining these formalities that we just talked about, then there is a chance that the corporate veil could be pierced. But that could be with 1 member, 2 members, 3 members, 4 members. It just means that you have to have your formalities in place. What does that mean? Well, again, you have your own personal bank account and you have your LLC's bank account. When your spouse, your children, your grandparents, and so on give you money, or they're on your personal account, you don't commingle those funds with your business account. That if you transfer money back and forth, you have some sort of way to document that, right? Whether that's if you give your own personal money to the LLC to make business, to do business, or the other way around when you take money out of the LLC. That any kind of contracts you sign are in the name of the LLC, right? So you keep that separation, making sure that me, the individual, is different from my business. Your business is an own entity. And actually, under Florida statute, even if some of those formalities are not properly held, the court kind of sides with formalities as that the corporate veil would not be pierced. The point is, are you doing it to maybe defraud the public? Are you doing something shady? Are you doing it, commingling funds and transferring money back and forth to maybe defraud the IRS? If there's something shady going on, then the court will pierce the corporate veil. For example, here's somebody sues the LLC, and the LLC owned, let's say, a building worth $1 million, right? So somebody sues it, they get a judgment, and all of a sudden you transfer the $1 million building into your own name. And you say, ha, the LLC owns nothing. I don't owe you anything, right? That was probably to defraud the person who sued you, because you transferred it for no reason whatsoever, just so the person that sued the LLC could not get to that building. At that point, the court would probably say, we're going to pierce the corporate veil because you did this to basically get away with something shady. So overall, I don't think adding another member will prevent the court from piercing the corporate veil if something shady is going on. The best thing you can do is have all your documents in the right place. You have a separate bank account. You don't commingle your personal funds and your spouse's money with your LLC money. And you have a proper accounting system in place, and you just keep all of that up. You make sure that you are registered on Sunbiz, that you renew that annually, that you do your taxes right, and that you do not, of course, transfer assets back and forth for purposes that are shady, like trying to prevent somebody from suing you or trying to get out of paying money.
Thank you, Kiara.
Great. Yeah, thank you. That was a great answer. I also wanted to, Will has another question. Will, last call for question, guys. Will?
Thank you. So for a person like me who is not for profit and don't have profit interests, and so all the LLCs that I do currently have and plan to have in the future will be for my nonprofit activities and endeavors, that would be transferring of, that'll be a proper transfer from an LLC to my Florida not-for-profit. Is that correct?
Are those, basically we call them wholly owned subsidiaries. All those LLCs are owned by the nonprofit, right?
Yes.
Yes. So you just got to make sure that your nonprofit is properly set up. You have a proper board. You have your bylaws, and you have your meetings, and you vote as a board on your decisions. And yes, so we usually recommend, and we always help our nonprofits set up different LLC to either hold property or to do other business ventures. But the important thing here is that the nonprofit is the sole owner of those LLCs, and you would report the LLC as a disregarded entity on your 990. But it's always a good idea, because the problem with what you see a lot with nonprofits is the same as an individual, right? If somebody sues a nonprofit and they get a judgment against the nonprofit, all of a sudden your accounts are in danger. Even grant money that you're supposed to be using for a very specific purpose, and you would try to avoid that. So ideally, the best way to set up a nonprofit is that all your outward facing activities are done under solely owned subsidiaries, LLCs. So in case there is some risk of getting sued, those LLCs are sued and not the parent company that holds all that grant money and all the accounts.
And so I can just have my profits go as a donation to my nonprofits as a second or as a separate entity. My proceeds can go as a donation to my nonprofit. Is that?
No, because we're talking about wholly owned subsidiaries where the LLC is owned by the nonprofit. So just like the default taxation scheme, the income, the profits of the LLC would be reported as income of the nonprofit on the 990. It's a disregarded entity. So what you're talking about, you got to be careful though, because again, we're talking about an LLC that is owned by the nonprofit, not you yourself, right? The nonprofit is technically a public entity. But
so let's
yes,
talk about the second case of it not being owned by the LLC, but it's owned by me. And that's what I'm trying to do, is because again, I don't have no profit interest. And so just to protect my nonprofit from a tax like you mentioning, is the second option a viable one? Let's put it like that.
like you run your own business and you're donating money to your nonprofit or to a nonprofit?
Yes.
Generally, yes. I mean, you can donate, anybody can donate to a nonprofit, right? But I would recommend that, this is also something that sounds like you're trying to do something complex, that you probably apply for our services, so we can talk a little bit more about specifically what you're trying to do and see how to best structure what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Will, for the question. I want to extend the last opportunity to anybody who hasn't spoken yet to ask a question or make a comment. last call. Don't be shy. And because I want to ask you also, Ms. Sardebra, I want to ask about contracts if at all possible. Kiara, we have time, but I know Ms. Sardebra, then I'm going to go to Ms. Stacey. Sardebra?
Good morning. Thank you, Danilo, again. I'd like to know about, first of all, I'd like to know, as far as I heard you say in the beginning that your organization dealt with affordable housing. And I'd like to know, is it really affordable housing or low income housing? And also, what are you actually doing, and how does that affect coming into neighborhoods? And there's a problem, affordable housing, and then low income housing, and then affecting some neighborhoods and causing gentrification. So I'd like to know just where you all stand on that.
So we are a law firm, so we don't do affordable housing ourselves, but we give legal assistance to nonprofit affordable housing developers who are building affordable housing. Most of our clients, they probably do affordable housing up to the 60 or 80% AMI. There's been calls to do a little bit higher, up to 120 to 140 AMI, which is considered workforce housing, but mostly because it's really, really difficult to do affordable housing, especially for very low income, which is up to 30% AMI. And a lot of times nowadays, the balance sheets just don't work out anymore if you want to build something that's purely up to 30% AMI. It's very competitive to get funding for those. And they just have a very high difficulty of running further into the future because they're difficult to maintain. So nowadays, what you kind of see is that developers will try to do a mix so they can create more 30% housing, but use the higher income to support more lower income eligibility, like up to 30% AMI. So what we do is we can help with anything from helping the purchase of those properties that they're using to then develop those properties, closing on financing with the county or the municipalities or state funding for affordable housing, and also just the workup that a property requires in order to build affordable housing on it. That's anything from title reviews and remedying any type of title defects.
Thank you so much for the question, Ms. Sardebra. We're running out of time, so I'm asking everybody to please be brief. Ms. Stacey, you're next.
Good morning and thank you. So my question is, with the setup of the LLC, is it possible to have a parent organization if you have a sole proprietorship, if you have a parent organization as the sole proprietorship that has all your assets, and then you have an LLC that doesn't have any assets, is that something that can be done?
So the sole proprietorship is you yourself as an individual. That is not a legal entity. But you yourself can create an LLC, but the LLC has to, and that goes back to piercing the corporate veil, has to have sufficient assets to do its own business, right? And so if, for example, you run a business where you need a car and you have some overhead and so on, but your LLC's bank account is empty and it technically could not function without you, the person behind it, then there might be a chance that a corporate veil would be pierced, right? So you want to make sure that the LLC has the assets that it needs to at least run. But again, just remember that a sole proprietorship is not a legal entity. It just means that you are going into business on your own as yourself, and there's no entity, no legal entity separating you from what you're doing in business.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stacey. Ms. Nurka, did you want to chime in?
So I had a question. When you want to do start a non-profit for a media company as a producer, I was reading about that it can be a one person nonprofit. Is that true? What is the requirements for that?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
So a nonprofit for a production company,
Mm-hmm.
what are the requirements for that?
A nonprofit is a mission-based organization. So it doesn't matter what mission you do, it just has to be a charitable mission. So there's the code is 501c3. It's usually all charitable missions, and there are all kinds of other 501c organizations. But if the idea would be, if you want to do a 501c3 for a production company, that any profits you make go back into the mission of the organization that has something to do with the production company. It could be, for example, a production company to help children come into the business, or help, I don't know, people that work for production companies. It's something like that, or training programs. But the idea is it has to be charitable in nature.
Right, that's what I want. I want to have a woman in films and veteran in film plus training.
Yes, so I would recommend that you apply to our program, and then we can help you figure out what the right mission is, because it does have to be run in a charitable nature.
I think the alternative question was one person versus a board, like you mentioned to me.
Or what was that? We didn't catch that. Nurka, thank you for the question.
Sorry, I would like to respond to Christian Perez real quick, because he's put something in the comments. The difference when we talked about the LLC's assets is there's a difference between the LLC being sued and you yourself being sued. So if you drive a car and you get into a car crash, somebody sues me, Kiara, as an individual, and they will sue my LLC on top of that, right? Kiara's Nails. If they get a judgment against me, Kiara, the individual, then my personal assets are for sure up for grabs. The point is, you're trying to get all your activities done by your LLC, so that if somebody sues you, they have no reason to sue you, the individual, right? Because the LLC was doing all the work. But if I drive around in my own personal car and I kill somebody and they sue me, then all my assets are up for grabs. My own personal bank accounts and the 10 LLCs that I own and all their bank accounts. So what does it mean here? Make sure you got proper insurance to cover your own personal liability. So remember that we're always with LLCs and just liability, that we're talking two ways. Number one, if somebody sues the LLC for your business activities, but then what if something happens and somebody sues you personally in your own personal capacity? And LLCs won't protect you from that, because you're the point that caused the liability. You got sued, there's a judgment against you personally, and then everything you own is up for grabs.
Oh, so the insurance would be the best option.
Yes, yes.
Right. Thank you, Kiara. So we have one more minute. We're not going to get to all the questions. I'm sure we could do this for hours, right? Because this is a fascinating topic. But I want to ask you, one of the things we've been focusing on, Kiara, is to help small business owners have a great year in 2022. From your perspective in the legal world, what advice or tips would you give them to be able to accomplish that?
Number one is, of course, read everything that you're signing. And that also means with entities where you don't have any leverage to change anything, right? Because you need to know what you're getting into. So I think that's really super important. Make sure you read everything that you're signing. Make sure that your financials check out, meaning that you have a proper accounting system in place, that again, that you're not commingling funds, and that you're treating your small business as a separate entity from yourself. It's not your private piggy bank, it's a business, right? And if you want to grow it, you got to treat it as a legitimate, different entity from yourself. And then I think finally, it's just keep on learning, right? That's really important, especially now as things are moving so fast and there are different opportunities out there for small businesses and nonprofits with funding and so on. Get out there and really try to learn everything you see that comes across, everything that's new, because there might be a lot of new opportunities coming for your small business that you might not be aware of.
Great advice. And read everything before you sign it. Keep your financials in good order and keep learning, because you need, things are changing and you need to adapt. If folks want to reach out to you, Kiara, do they have to go through the application process? What's your preference for that?
So the easiest would be probably when you go through our website, there's also a link to my assistant. She has a much shorter last name, so it's easier to email her. rroncall@legalservices.org. You can reach me at cbrandstetter@legalservicesmiami.org. And then, of course, you can just apply for our services online and somebody will get back to you.
Great. Can you repeat those emails again one more time so everybody can
That
get them?
is rroncal, RONCAL, @legalservicesmiami.org. If you want to reach me directly, it's cbrandstetter@legalservicesmiami.org, or just apply for our services online at flcommunitydevelopment.org.
Fantastic. Thank you. I want to thank you so much for, number one, for joining us on the Huddle and enriching this community here, and also for everything you do, Kiara. It's really inspirational. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication to the community. Guys, let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Kiara. And guys, this is the last morning huddle of 2021. We're going to do it again on the 7th of January, the first Friday, I believe, of January. And we're going to have some great guests lined up so that you have the information and you're connected to them so that they can assist you in vital parts of your business. I want to wish everybody a very happy holiday season, happy new year, and let's keep working together, keep supporting the morning huddle so that we can all have a magnificent 2022. But it's up to us, so let's make it happen. Thank you guys, and an applause for all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Before you leave, don't be sure to download the chat.
Thank you, Danilo. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, Ms. Sardebra. Kiara, thank you. Monica, great to see you.
Bye, everyone. Blessings.
Vanessa, thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody. Stay safe.
Blessings, everyone. Be safe. Happy holidays.
Holidays.
Thank you and have a wonderful season and all the best for the new year, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Stacey.
Thank you. Best wishes for everybody in the new year.
Likewise, Jessica.
Take care.
Yes, can I have the chicken shrimp?
So Robert, nice to see you.
Chicken shrimp.
Thank you, guys.
All right, guys. Bye. I'll see you soon.